Good morning and welcome to the Active Shooter and Active Threat Response for Healthcare. My name is Jonathan McDowell and I am the Business Intelligence Manager here at the Nevada Primary Care Association. The Nevada Primary Care Association helps community health centers provide exceptional medical, dental, and behavioral health care to Nevadans by advocating policy changes, providing training and technical assistance, and creating economies of scale through program management. For more information regarding the NVPCA or to subscribe to our newsletter, please visit us at nvpca.org. This presentation is a partnership between the Nevada Primary Care Association and Connect Consulting Services. I would like to take a moment to thank them for helping us coordinate this training. Before we start, I would like to review logistics and housekeeping items for today's training. I kindly request that everybody type your name and organization into the chat box so we're able to see who is attending today's training. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to the presenter by typing them into the chat box or raising your hand at any time throughout this presentation. There will also be opportunity to ask questions on specific slides. During the presentation, please be sure to mute your phone or computer to limit feedback and background noise. Also, please do not put your phone on hold or we may be able to hear your hold music. At the end of the session, you'll be directed to a quick evaluation. Please take 2 minutes to complete it as this information will help us better serve you. All right, now without further ado, let me turn the presentation over to Eric Engel from Connect Consulting.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your time. Today we're going to talk about an unfortunate situation that we all have to train for, and that's active shooter and active threat response for healthcare. This is something that's impacting us, of course, nationally everywhere we are, but of course, there's a large increase in violence in healthcare. So this is me. My name's Eric Engel. I'm a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for a little over 20 years. I've been in emergency services for over 30 years, started out as an EMT in the field, became a national healthcare disaster professional and a master exercise practitioner. I'm also been an instructor for FEMA at the Center for Domestic Preparedness. I work closely with my various EMS agencies, including the State EMS Authority here in California. Currently, I am an emergency management coordinator or emergency preparedness coordinator for a large level 2 trauma center here in Northern California that is in the process of becoming a level 1 trauma center. I'm also a subject matter expert in CMS and Joint Commission Emergency Preparedness Regulations and Requirements. And I'll turn it over to my co-conspirator, so to speak, Rebecca. Rebecca, can you hear us?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rebecca Kynes. I am an emergency planning specialist with Connect Consulting Services. My history with emergency management is that I was the emergency management coordinator for City of Arlington, Texas for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was the Homeland Security Planner for Permian Basin Regional Planning Commission, and we serviced 27 rural West Texas counties and updating all their emergency management plans, as well as Homeland Security grants and planning. My focus is mainly at the local level of response for mass gathering events, pandemic planning, continuity of operations planning. And during my time with City of Arlington, I worked closely with multiple large state, federal agencies for Super Bowl planning, NBA All-Star events, as well as multiple flooding and hurricane evacuation and sheltering related events. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Rebecca. So today for the agenda, we're going to go over active shooter and active threat definitions. We're going to go over active shoot and active threat profiles. We'll go over active shooter and active threat background statistics. We'll go over response considerations. We'll go over recovery considerations and have a slide that also has some free available resources to you that can be utilized for your planning and preparedness. Each section does have a question slide. So once we reach that, if you put your questions into chat, Rebecca and I could possibly answer those questions for you. And if for some reason we can't, we will find answers. This course, of course, does contain some graphic images, some of them from real life events, some of them from drills and simulations. But regardless, some people may find this disturbing. This is images that can maybe trigger some emotional response. So just be aware of that. If there is a slide coming up, some of these slides, I will warn you ahead of time. So what are some definitions? What are active shooter incidents? Well, depending on what you read, an active shooter incident is an incident where one or more subjects actively engages in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined or populated area. Most of the time, active shooters use firearms, and there is no pattern or methodology to their selection of victims. They do not have targets. Active violence or active threat incidents where one or more subjects participate in an active ongoing attack with additional potential victims in harm's way. This is similar to an active shooter, but a subject utilizes a weapon other than a firearm. So this could be a blunt object like a baseball bat, could be an edged object like a knife or a machete or an axe, or even could be a vehicle. Most healthcare related incidents will be neither of these and are isolated to a single location with an individual brandishing or threatening with a weapon with a specific target or targets. Intentional mass casualty incidents, it's an act of violence caused by a single person or a group of persons with any means of goal of causing mass homicide and great bodily harm or injury. These may include, but are not limited to, the use of edged, blunt, or projectile weapons, deployment of chemical weapons and explosive devices, and even fire, incendiary devices. A rescue task force is a team comprised of law enforcement, force protection agencies, and a fire EMS group. RTFs are assembled as a cohesive team who enter a warm zone to rescue savable victims. We'll talk about the zones in just a moment. Mass attack or attacker incident, one or more subjects who participate in an active ongoing attack with additional potential victims in harm's way. And in these attacks, these subjects use any combination of weapons to inflict harm and mass homicide: rifles, shotguns, knives, vehicles, anything. Typically, these incidents have 4 or more victims to be placed into this category type. So your zones, these are the risk zones or danger zones, so to speak, in an active threat or an active shooter incident. The cold zone, this is the safe zone. This is an area where there is no significant danger or threat and may be achieved by distance, geographic location, or physical structure, something protecting it. This is, of course, a preferred location for establishing resource staging areas for equipment and personnel, incident command posts, and treatment and transportation sites as well. This area is still contained within the overall incident perimeter and still needs to be secured with a secure perimeter by law enforcement. The warm zone, this is the area where a potential threat still exists, but there is not a direct or immediate threat, and it can be mitigated through appropriate tactics, such as protective tactics, barrier tactics, etc. Now, the hot zone, this is the highest risk, the highest danger zone. This is the area where the direct and immediate threat still exists. The shooter is still here. This is an area that is still under fire and under threat. The area may be determined by many factors, including the type or threats of weapons, number of subjects, and physical structures. May also be considered the inner perimeter. Now, the next slide actually shows in a simulated incident what an active shooter incident looks like. You'll notice an aggressive individual entering with multiple weapons and not hitting any specific targets. The goal is just mass chaos and mass homicide. There will be some sound effects. It will be visually jarring to some individuals, so I wanted to warn you ahead of time, so potentially you could turn down your speakers. So here we go. And there's no sound from my end, so I hope people can hear.
There isn't sound on our end either, Eric.
Very interesting. Sorry about that, but you get the gist. It's the intent is mass homicide, mass chaos. There are no targets. There's no political agendas. There's just getting as many individuals killed as possible. That is your true definition of an active shooter. So let's get into some threat suspect profiles. An active shooter or attacker, again, actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined space and populated area. Most of these shooters use firearms, but honestly, we know that they have multiple weapons on site. There is no pattern or selection to their intended victims. They don't want to take hostages. They don't want to rob the place. They want to create a high or highest casualty rate before being confronted and possibly neutralized by police. They could be a motivated, self-motivated extremist. And there's really no specific age, gender, race, religion, or nationality. May or may not have specific targets. Truly, usually it's not targets. It's just take down as many individuals as possible. So concerning behaviors are what we really look at. No true profile, but concerning behaviors. These concerning behaviors, these individuals may present with a fixation on violent fantasy content. They may start presenting with new onset or ongoing issues with anger and rage. An inappropriate fascination with weapons, especially those designed to kill. Boasting and practicing fighting skills and weapons use for no identified reason. As an example, the individual to the right on the screen was the shooter in the most recent Texas tragedy. This individual is actually out targeting people with BB guns and other kinds of non-lethal firearms just to practice, and was boasting about doing this. That's definitely a concerning behavior. Could be a loner or a recluse. They may start demonstrating suicidal or homicidal ideation. They may be paranoid that everyone's out to get them and feelings of persecution. They may also feel that this world cannot work without them, and they're the ones that truly should be in charge of everything. Drastic changes in sleep patterns, drastic change in appearance and hygiene, inappropriate fixations on individuals or ideological causes, and comments or leakage on violent intent or a pending attack. Common motives, shooter motives are usually due to revenge and rage, some sort of rage that they have against maybe an individual or a group that's causing the trigger. Motives may also be due to suicidal ideation, possibly, they want their own life to end by law enforcement while making a name for themselves, ending the life of an ill-loved one, escape from custody, mental instability, or even to make political statements. They have a desire to kill without the concern for their own safety or concern of their own capture. Normally has intended victims, especially in healthcare, and will possibly search them out, taking out targets of opportunity while looking. They'll continue to move through a building or area until stopped by intervening citizens, law enforcement, suicide, or other interventions. Pre-attack behaviors and stressors were researched by the FBI in order to establish attackers' triggers, and found that the perpetrators displayed between 4 to 5 stressors within at least a year before they attacked. They may be bullied or be the bully at school. They may be intimidated or an intimidator at their workplace. They may have an ongoing deterioration of performance at school and work, an adverse school or employment action against them, an adverse health condition in themselves or a loved one, and a deterioration in physical health. They may start demonstrating breakdown in their own personal interactions, increased alcohol or drug use, deterioration in logical thinking or communication, an adverse change in personal and family life, and some sort of personal grievance. And we also have to think employee indicators as well. There may be increased complaints against an individual on issues related to workplace violence or abuse towards others, increased use of drugs, depression, alcohol, or withdrawal symptoms, unexplained increase in absenteeism or vague physical complaints, increased severe mood swings and noticeable unstable or emotional rage responses, explosive outbursts of anger without provocation, increased unsolicited comments about violence, firearms, and other dangerous weapons or violent crimes, Behavior that may suggest paranoia, like my director is out to get me and everyone hates me, and comments about being singled out, abused, or persecuted. While such factors do not always mean a worker will engage in violent behavior, they may still pose other risks, and that should be addressed through your reporting process internally. And again, I always like to say it, if you see something suspicious, please say something. It doesn't matter where you are. Situational awareness is key. One of the things that I like to do if I travel is I always know my exit routes, whether am I staying at a hotel or wherever I am. The more aware of my surroundings, the safer I'll be. And I know that. And that's what I always have done. One of the things I like to teach is, a good acronym for situational awareness called RAIN. RAIN stands for recognize a possible threat, whether that's behavioral indicators or physical indicators. Avoid the possible threat. Isolate yourself or others from that threat, and make notifications, whether that's to security, emergency personnel, or even 911 notifications to law enforcement. Don't hesitate to make notifications. It's very important to do so. Some physical examples that may demonstrate an individual may be attempting to conceal a weapon are the following. If they do something like a self-security check, where they touch and adjust concealed weapons in pockets, especially if they step over things that have different elevations like steps or curbs or sidewalks. If they have some sort of unusual gait, like they're not bending their knees, they may have something large concealed in a torn out pocket area like a shotgun or longhorn or even a machete, due to a long weapon in the pants. The jacket sag may be due to where a weapon or ammunition is located. If you see a large bulge in a pocket in a jacket, a hunchback stride is where an individual is trying to conceal a bulge from a rifle slung over his shoulder that is under a coat. Bulges are outlines of a weapon that you can demonstrate or see in a shirt or a pocket. Or palming. Palming is where an individual is hiding a weapon in a pocket. This could be a small handgun or a pistol, or it could be a small knife. And they refuse to remove their hands from their pockets. This is definitely something to be concerned about. And make sure you have at least, anywhere between, they say a minimum of 3 feet between an individual like this, or up to 7 feet. To me, the 7 feet is a safe distance. If you have an individual that you suspect maybe of a weapon that is palming, a good safe distance back from them while you try to have security intervene is appropriate. You want to make sure you have time to get away. We're on a question slide. So if there are any questions, if that can go in the chat box, and I still can't see the chat box, but are there any questions at all?
It looks like we don't have any right now.
All right, we'll keep moving on. Let's look at some background statistics. Key findings from a study performed by the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit found the following. 77% of the suspects in active shooter incidents spent a week or longer planning their attack, and 46% spent a week or longer actually obtaining resources and supplies for the attack. Most active shooters obtain their firearms legally by 40% of those. Then 2% of those purchased a firearm illegally, and only 6% of those stole the firearm. The FBI could only verify that 25% of active shooters and attackers in the study had ever been diagnosed with a mental illness. Of those diagnosed, only 3 had been diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder with bouts of psychosis. On average, each active shooter displayed 4 to 5 of those concerning behaviors we discussed, with most of those behaviors related to an active shooter's mental health, problematic interpersonal interactions, and their leakage of violent intent. The most common response to communicate worry and concerns of concerning behaviors were only done directly to the individual that became the attacker, and no involvement of law enforcement. Only in 41% of those cases was a concerning behavior ever reported to law enforcement. In other words, only 41% of the cases people considered to see something, say something. In other words, they were not reported those concerns to law enforcement. 64% of at least one of the victims in the incident was specifically targeted by the active attacker. In 2021, attacks occurred on each day of the week and during every month of the year. 56% of the attacks took place during PM hours between noon and 11:59 p.m. 44% of the attacks took place during the AM hours between midnight and 11:59 a.m. Data from the 2021 statistics show that active shooter attacks is more likely to occur between 6 a.m. and 5:59 p.m. with a 64% risk of them occurring. Data from 2021 also demonstrate that Saturday held the highest risk of active shooter active mass attack incidents. These incidents evolve rapidly and end quickly, often before law enforcement and emergency response personnel even arrive. In the 2021 incidents, 47% of the incidents lasted less than 5 minutes. 15% of the incidents lasted between 5 to 14 minutes, and 38% of the incidents lasted more than 15 minutes. Locations in the United States between 2019 and 2021, this is from statistics from the Secret Service and the FBI. There were a total of 147 determined attacks between this time frame. The most common locations for active shooter and attack incidents are businesses, commerce locations. The second most common are open space and transit. Then education is also in there. 10% occurred on government, 10 incidents occurred on government property. Residents had 8 incidents occur, and healthcare in the hospital and healthcare non-hospital. Both of those had between 1 incident and 3 incidents. Victimology between these incidents, there were 425 individuals wounded and 296 individuals killed. Now, back to concerning behaviors. One of the concerning behaviors we mentioned was called pre-attack or informational pre-attack leakage. This is defined as an indirect communication through a third party of intent to do harm. This could be done, through social media, could be done through, podcasting, which has been done before. It could be done through things like Instagram, which you see here. That was an Instagram post from the individual who did the most recent shooting in Texas. Statistically, of the leakage in adult active shooters, 51% had leaked intent through a third party before an attack. In active shooters 17 and younger, 88% leaked information prior to an attack. This could even be text messages to their people that they like at school stating, hey, don't go to school tomorrow just because, or don't go to school after 9 a.m., things like that. Any of these things should be reported as soon as possible to law enforcement. Threats are another form of concerning behaviors, but unlike leakage, these are direct communications of an intent to cause harm. This can be done in verbal communications like in person or in written form as well. Statistics from threats, 95% of those did occur in person. I'm coming back to get you. And 14% of those threats occurred in written form, whether that's an email or an actual written document, a piece of paper. Any threat really, truly does need to be taken seriously. Report that to your law enforcement agencies, report that to your internal processes through your supervisors, managers, security, whatever works. Take them seriously, though. All right. Any other questions or any questions at all? No questions in the chat?
I do have one question for you, Eric.
Yes.
Where would a good place to, so you mentioned notifying the police or notifying those type of organizations. What if you're not sure the threat is credible or not?
They would honestly, they would prefer you to report it. Let them do the investigation. There are lots of things out there that appear not credible that truly are. So take them seriously, follow that process, and do report them. It is a no-fault reporting environment. You won't be getting in trouble unless you intentionally did it and there was no harm, but you wanted to cause harm to another individual by reporting something that's false. That's completely different. This is not that. If you truly feel there's a threat, make that report. Some agencies do have local that you can call report lines, confidential reporting lines. Some have even ones you can text these concerns now too. They have some things that if you see something, text something. That's a program that is agencies like back east are having, and some are getting in California as well. but definitely do report them. Don't hesitate. If it truly turns out to be nothing, great. It's nothing, but nothing will spill back on you as a reporting party. And, even I have reported things that turned out to be nothing. But I didn't do it, I did it without hesitation because I truly felt there was a concern.
There's none in the chat box.
All right, let's keep going. So, response considerations. Truly, preparedness is the key to any response. I always say prepare now to be ready later, especially when the worst case scenario happens. Time is now to practice and rehearse the actions you may take in an incident of workplace violence that can escalate even up to an active shooter, but even think about how you would respond if it doesn't have a weapon or a blunt weapon, what you would do. Trained response responds in a more rapid fashion, in an efficient fashion than untrained response. Untrained response means you basically panic and freeze, which can be actually deadly in an active shooter incident. Again, use that RAIN acronym and use that situational awareness. Always be aware of the environment around you. Remember, if you see something, say something. Train and learn and practice now with law enforcement, EMS, and fire in active shooter incidents. If you have not participated in a drill or exercise with them, I highly recommend you do. Learn and practice now for their own staff safety and have them be ready to provide first aid too, possibly, because we internally could be the initial first responders of repair care for, the victims, which could be our friends and coworkers, before emergency services even arrive. And get into that survival mindset. Get away from the thought that this could never happen here, because statistics show that truly these incidents can now happen anywhere. Survival mindset means you're going to be ready mentally and physically for the worst case scenario. Awareness, again, be aware that it can happen and it can happen anywhere. Understand that this can happen in any work setting and environment, all across all levels of the employment aspect, and really anywhere in the community as well. Don't be apathetic. Again, if you see something, say something. Acceptance doesn't mean you're accepting someone threatening you. Acceptance means if you hear of something going on, whether it's gunfire or you hear people screaming and see something or someone being attacked by a bladed weapon, acceptance means you're accepting the incident is happening. Don't let your mind talk yourself out of it. Don't say, oh, it's just firecrackers. Oh, maybe they're just practicing over there. No, accept that it's happening so you can take action in a rapid fashion. Action could mean things like run, hide, and fight. Preparation, entails you becoming a stakeholder in your own safety and security. In particular, change the view of the work environment and shift to a what-if way of thinking. And be sure to keep internally your policy and procedures and your emergency notification contact numbers up to date. And practice ahead of time. This could be done, mentally, just internally, you thinking, looking around, what would you do if this occurred? Where's some exit routes? Where's a location I could hide? Or even looking at your desk or wherever you're working, thinking, what could I use as a weapon against an aggressive individual that's threatening to kill me? Little things like that, including going all the way up to a tabletop exercise or a functional or full-scale exercise on an active shooter. Any of these could really help in that mindset to get you trained and ready for when or possibly if this occurs. Key acronyms for survival and response for fire and EMS is the THREAT acronym. THREAT stands for threat suppression. They're going to neutralize the threat. Next stands for hemorrhage control. They're going to use things like tourniquets, direct pressure, or wound packing for emergency bleeding control. Next is rapid extrication to safety. They're going to, once a threat is neutralized, if possible, or maybe even under care, under fire, they'll try to rapidly extricate individuals to a safer environment. And then assessment by medical providers. This could be done by emergency services. It could be done by healthcare providers in a hospital. And lastly, transport to definitive care. Definitive care could be, transport to your local ER, or it could even be you're transporting from the ED once you're assessed up to definitive care in the operating room suite. This was created by a group called the American College of Surgeons in a joint collaboration with the Federal Bureau of Investigation when they formed something called the Hartford Consensus. A Hartford Consensus is all about healthcare and EMS and general population being ready and prepared for an active shooter incident. Another process can help even in healthcare settings is utilizing the 4 A's. Again, the first A is acceptance. Accept that the emergency is occurring. This must be done fast. And again, don't let your mind talk yourself out of it. Then A, assess what to do next so you can save yourself and others. And this, of course, depends on your location. So knowing where you are and looking around ahead of time is always key. Know your work environment where you are. And then another one is act or action, run, hide, fight. And last is A, alert. Alert internal responders, law enforcement, etc., when safe to do so. So if you're trying to run and evacuate and it's not safe to make notifications on your mobile phone, don't slow down, don't hesitate to make calls. Just get out of the danger zone. And then once it's safe to do so, you can make those notifications. All right. So if it's occurring and it's on site where you are, but there is not an immediate threat to you or your location or your department, if you can and it's secureable, secure your location. Don't let personnel, patients, visitors, volunteers, or vendors exit that location. Stay there. Especially important for locations that may have ventilatory dependent patients. They can't leave, they can't move. If you have secureable doors, close and lock those doors and remain in lockdown mode until you get an all clear notification. Do not let individuals in. We'll talk about that, why not to do that in a moment, but it should, make perfect sense. If there's an active shooter threat, don't open the door again. Make notifications to security, law enforcement immediately if you notice some sort of suspicious person or witness that person with a weapon outside that unit. And again, there may be extended delays in all clear notifications. Expect that. It depends on the incident type, the size of the location that's being impacted. If it's a small facility, the all clear may go quicker than a much larger facility because rooms have to be searched and all clear announced by law enforcement. All right, now we're getting into the run, hide, and fight considerations. So if there is an immediate threat to you in your area, just run, evacuate the area. If run out of that danger area, get as far away into your safe location. Some locations do have pre-designated staging sites for evacuation for active shooter incidents. If that's true and you're trained in that, go to that location. It's safe to go do so as you're running out. Instruct others to leave the area or to take shelter. If you have patient rooms and they can't run and you're leaving, hopefully they'll close their own doors. But if not, let patients know what to do. Close your door, get down low, turn off lights as you're running out. Possibly, tell them to potentially, if it's a hospital, most patient rooms have bathrooms. There's a nice secureable location for patients that can get to it. Leave personal belongings behind. Don't grab your purses, your wallets, whatever. But take your mobile phone with you. Take your mobile device. If you take it with you, do silence it though. Don't turn it off. Just silence the ringer and any notifications on your mobile phone or any other electronic communication devices you have, maybe even a radio. Just turn that volume down and silence it. I've had people say, hey, if this is happening, I'm just going to pull the fire alarm. Please don't do that. While some locations, it'll automatically close doors, it's going to cause a lot of panic and confusion and potentially bring in more targets, to the shooter of the local fire department that are coming to an area that are expecting to encounter a fire, not an individual with a firearm. And when it's safe to do so, call and text 911, make internal emergency notifications. Some of the things that they want to know from 911 is your specific location. Let them know what building you're in. Let them know your address if you know it. Let them know the number of attackers that you saw. Let them know a description of the attackers. Their race, their clothing, what their any other thing you can think of. Type of weapons they have, and you don't have to be specific. Let them know if they have, if you saw multiple pistols or rifles or shotguns. Just let them know the type of weapons that you saw, and consider the number of victims. Report the number of victims that maybe you saw down on the ground, the fatalities or casualties, or the number of people that were in your department and unit, or the number of people that may even be hiding still in your department and unit. These are key things that 911 emergency services will want to hear about. And similar, if you're outside and this is occurring, again, run. And run if it's safe to do so, but stay low. They used to say, the whole bob and weave thing, but they kind of ruled that out. Now it's just run, stay low, and get out of the area. Look for appropriate locations for actual cover and protection. Cover and protection is important. These are things that could potentially stop a bullet from penetrating, like brick walls, retaining walls, large trees. If you're hiding behind a parked vehicle, get below by a wheel well, or get behind where a engine block could be. Unlike movies, bullets will easily penetrate the metal and doors. So don't just stay there. Once you're in that location where the cover and protection is, stay down. Don't get up, don't pop up and look around, just stay down. Avoid locations that just provide concealment. Concealment really provides no protection. If you're just ducking behind a bush or laying down in some tall grass, that's not going to keep you safe from a bullet. So look for something that provides that cover and protection. Silence again, any sort of notifications on your mobile phone or electronic devices like a radio. And again, call and text, make those emergency notifications again with your location, number of attackers, description of them, types of their weapons, and number of victims. Now, if you can't get away, if there's an immediate threat but you can't run, hide. Hide in a safe and securable location if you can, something with thick walls and few windows. Once you're in there, get down low and turn off the lights. And if there's a small window, maybe like in a door, don't look through that window. Just stay out of the line of sight and stay low. Again, silence notifications on whatever devices you have, and look around. Look around in your environment and see what you could use as a weapon or weapons in case the shooter or attacker gets into the room. If safe to do so and you have injured folks with you, stop their bleeding. Provide some first aid if you can. If it's a true, life-threatening injury, victims can bleed out in 3 to 5 minutes. And a lot of victims, even with severe extremity bleeding, can be saved. And do not open doors until an all notification or all clear notification comes through. Reason why is people could be pounding on the door, let me in, it's an all clear. You open the door and it's the attacker. They could do things like situational camouflage, actually dress up like law enforcement. That has been done before in the active shooter incident that occurred in Norway, where they actually dress up as the rescuers and then they are actually the attackers. Don't try to hide in a place that can be dangerous, like the edge of a roof without some sort of safety protection. Stay away from that. When you're in a room that you're hiding, secure the doors in any way that you can if you can't lock them. Know which way a door swings. You could use things like even belts, cords, door stops work as well. And lessons learned from previous incidents, like the incident that occurred up at Virginia Tech. Demonstrated the importance of stacking tall items to form potentially a barricade. This could stop individuals from getting into a room. A lot of times you're just moving through without, taking out targets or opportunity as they go. And if they can't get into a room, they'll just move on. But also, if they do try to get into the room, this will give you time to coordinate and form groups potentially, so you can fight the attacker. Fighting the attacker is the last step, and you do this if you or others are in immediate jeopardy for life and limb. Coordinate efforts for a maximum impact. Don't try to do this alone if you can. Work together as a team. Use objects in your direct environment as weapons. If you're in a plant operations shop, you've got lots of tools around there. If you're in a nursing area or administration area, cup of coffee is a great weapon, especially if it's hot. Letter openers, staplers, fire extinguishers, laptops, whatever you can use against the attacker, and commit to your action like your life depends on it, because truly it does. Also, you're going to have to fight your fear. Truly, this is nature. This is nature of us being human. We will be scared, and it doesn't matter who you are, or even if you've gone through these situations, you will still be scared. Stay calm the best you can, because people will be looking to you for leadership and what to do. Fear truly can be your worst enemy, though. High level sympathetic nervous system stimulation, occurs when you're being presented with some sort of unanticipated threat, and the time to respond is minimal. As your heart rate rises and your breathing rises, your self-control will begin to decrease. If your heart rate is between 100 and 140, especially above 140, you'll start to lose fine motor control. You start having speech disruption. If your heart rate's greater than 180, you're in panic mode. You will lose cognitive skills. You'll have to rely on your past trainings that you've had or your muscle memory on what to do. One of the things that you can try to do, because you can't just spontaneously tell your heart to slow down. We're not magicians, but you can control two subconscious body functions, and that's the blinking of your eyes and your breathing. If you close your eyes, take a 4-count deep breaths in through the nose, out through your mouth, and consciously slow down your blinking, this will help slow down that heart rate. And you do this where you're in a safe location, of course. Doing this will truly give you back that ability to start thinking again and using your cognitive skills and using your ability to respond in a safer fashion. And remember, stop the bleed when you can. And just so you know, the legs there, that is not real. That is from an active shooter drill that we did here. Research and history shows, and truly the active risk of most incidents is over before the EMS first responders even arrive on scene. Uncontrolled hemorrhage is the leading cause of death. Rescue efforts will be delayed until the assailant is stopped, and the survivors on scene, which could be you, will be the initial first responders. 90% of those deaths in previous incidents occurred prior to definitive care. 42% of those were immediately occurred. These were non-salvageable injuries. 26% of those occurred within 5 minutes. 16% of those occurred between 5 and 30 minutes. And 8 to 10% of them occurred within 30 minutes to 2 hours. The remainder survived between 2 and 6 hours during prolonged extrication and care. So if you can, provide basic first aid, provide things like tourniquet use. There's lots of things out there, like Stop the Bleed is a great program that you can do free for your own internal staff to provide basic care, basic life-saving care immediately, and it's very easy to do. And we have to remember that individuals may have improvised explosive devices on them or with them. We have seen these in multiple active shooter incidents, whether it's with Columbine or whether it's with the Aurora, Colorado shooter, or whether it's with the incidents that occurred out here in one of the healthcare centers. Pipe bombs were used. If you see something that looks suspicious, do not approach that. Do not touch the device. Do not touch anything that may be like an unattended package or bags. Remain calm, remain clear, and clear the immediate area and make emergency notifications. Attempt to get as much distance between you and whatever it is as possible. with something between you, like even a fire door or a desk or whatever you have if you're outside a vehicle. Law enforcement will direct all actions related to the suspicious item and the immediate area. They will be in charge. And if instructed to do so, immediately turn off your cellular devices and radios. Anything that can produce a signal can possibly cause an unintentional detonation. In one incident in 2020, 4 IEDs were found during an active shooter incident. Now, once law enforcement gets there, their initial response is not going to be assisting victims. Their initial response and their singular purpose is going to be stopping the threat. So that is very important to know. It's important to provide a primary entry point or location for them and let them know exactly where the last known suspected location is. Once the threat is neutralized or isolated and away from the potential victims, secondary teams will begin direct threat level care. This is like your rescue task forces for emergency hemorrhage control on victims and even placing them into recovery positions, which we'll talk about in a moment. Please follow the directions of the law enforcement officers and what to do. You will be considered a suspect and you possibly will be cuffed and searched. So expect that. You will have weapons pointed at you by the law enforcement officers. It's important to keep your hands open and away from your body. Even if you're panicking, do not point at the officers or make quick movements or run and scream toward them. Drop any objects you have in your hands. Do not point at them and do not run toward them unless you are instructed to do so. Wherever you're taking refuge or hiding, just don't immediately run out because you think or see that law enforcement is there. Because again, issues with related to situational camouflage with a shooter and attacker, they may be dressed up as law enforcement and you see them and you run out to get care and you have suddenly now become another victim. Don't do that. It's just one of those little things that I like to emphasize just in case. I mean, you can get police uniforms that look like real police uniforms on Amazon or any online ordering area. So please just stay there and until a truly definitive all clear comes through. Running panic down a hallway just gives new targets of opportunity to the attackers. So stay where you are. Secondary teams, rescue task forces will then start evacuation and triage of victims. And you as a survivor may be asked to assist in that evacuation. And you as a survivor may be asked or need to provide basic and life-saving first aid measures on your friends, patients, co-workers, and even visitors, and potentially even yourself. So zones, I mentioned some zones. Let's talk about these control zones. A hot zone, this is an area immediately surrounding the shooter. It has not been cleared or secured by law enforcement. Only thing provided here is what they call direct threat casualty care. This could be things like direct pressure, application of a tourniquet, like a combat application tourniquet, and placing a person in the recovery position, which is basically bending one of their knees up and bending an arm or shoulder and rolling them onto their left side. That's traditionally called the recovery position. Warm zone, this is an area outside of the hot zone. It's an area that's been swept and cleared by law enforcement, but truly hasn't been secured yet. You provide what's called indirect threat casualty care here, and they'll establish what's called a casualty collection point. By they, that would be EMS and law enforcement working together with fire. In this, they'll apply a tourniquet if it's not already applied, or reevaluate a tourniquet, because sometimes in direct threat casualty care, you'll put that tourniquet on and just till the bleeding slows and not stops. Here at this point, we can tighten that down if there's a life-threatening bleeding on an extremity that needs a tourniquet, and we'll tighten that down and make sure the bleeding completely stops. They can pack wounds with hemorrhage control gauze. They can, establish an airway like an endotracheal tube or something called a combi tube or a king airway, or even some agencies will perform emergency cricothyrotomies in this location. EMS providers can potentially provide needle decompression and chest seals if there's any sort of chest trauma involved. Maybe there's an open chest wound that's leaking air into the cavity there that's slowly collapsing the lungs, so they need to treat that. And they can put some sort of dressing or splint on in this location. Cold zone, this is the safe area. This is the area surrounding the incident that is secured fully by law enforcement, or it's even an area that's potentially near or off-site where care is being provided, like in an emergency room. All normal EMS and medical care activities can take place in the cold zone, including if they need to transport to definitive medical care. Now, it's important to activate, whether you have in the field incident command or in the hospital or healthcare, the hospital incident command system, activate these and your emergency response plans early. The incident management team traditionally that activates the command center in a safe location. Typical positions activated in the active shooter incident response guide from the Emergency Services Authority for the state for the hospital incident command system are the following. You always have to have someone in charge. You have the incident commander. You have the public information officers in charge of management of all the media and informational releases. You have your liaison officer that's in charge of working with all the responding agencies coming in. You have your safety officer that's in charge of all aspects of safety, whether it's from the responders to the victims to the personnel involved internally. You have your operations section chief that's in charge of, getting, managing any sort of aspects of resources, continuity of care, things like that. Medical care branch director, if you have a large hospital, and security branch director is activated as well, being a liaison directly with law enforcement routinely. Planning section chief is in charge of documentation and looking ahead, and situational unit leader is activated as well. These are recommended levels for immediate activation. Truly, they don't all have to be activated. The only one that really has to be activated is your incident commander. Be prepared to function in what is called unified command, or UC, with responding agencies. That's one of those things that's anticipated and expected. The incident commander from the field will want to work with the incident commander from your agency, whether it's a hospital or a clinic, et cetera, if you're activating that. You'll work together and come upon a dual incident action plan that would work for it, and you'll all work together for successful response in this incident. And accurate information is critical and crucial, whether it's for your staff, your patients, volunteers, and even getting messages out to your community. Local media outlets and social media, they can be your best friend or truly your worst enemy. Getting to know them ahead of time and working ahead, and even developing scripts that you can utilize in these kinds of incidents are important to do as well. Develop emergency plans and redundant media staging and briefing sites ahead of time. Know where these are ahead of time, so when these individuals present to this location to get some sort of either a briefing or do interviews, etc., you know where they are ahead of time, and they could be in a location that's mapped out and even provided to your security services if you have them. And do designate a public information officer or designated personnel to manage messages, some sort of site lead maybe in your location, or a manager or someone with the ability to do that. It's important to do so. It's important also for personnel and patient accounting. You have to have methods to account where all these individuals are. Work ahead of time and establish methods with your local law enforcement and even your public health. If you have a large scale incident, they may activate what's called a family reunification center out in the field. Internally, you can establish one as well, an employee or family reunification center. This can be done in a safe location, separate from distractions or separate from media and the general public. The media would love to be directly involved at a family reunification center, but honestly, it's truly inappropriate. Schedule periodic informational updates for all staff, patients, visitors, and the public, and make sure that information is accurate. This could be done by text messages, briefings. This could be done by postings on social media. It could even be done by doing hard copy messages and posting them on some sort of message board. If it is a large scale incident and it's activated in the community, they may activate something called the Joint Information System or the Joint Information Center. It's important that personnel that's assigned internally to put messages out also work with personnel from the community Joint Information Center. That way, all the messages that are coming through are unified and the information is accurate. On to any questions at this point. That was a long section, so.
Eric, I have a question for you. So
Yes,
if
ma'am.
any of our health centers are interested in doing any kind of drills, because you mentioned the practicing, is
Mhm.
it just best for them to contact their local law enforcement agency then to do that? Or what's the best option for them for that?
Yeah, law enforcement is a great option. Law enforcement, so whether it's sheriffs or police agencies, that's a great option. Also, possibly their healthcare coalitions. If they have existing healthcare coalitions, they may also have abilities to do active shooter exercises and drills. They may even have some community-based drills or trainings that they may be able to become involved in. But yeah, law enforcement, fire, and then healthcare coalitions would be some of the ones that I would recommend reaching out to.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box at any time during the presentation, or you can also raise your hand and I can unmute you so you can ask the question.
And Eric, let me go ahead and
Yes.
ask, this came up in another training that I had attended, and it was the question of compliance and when do you comply in an active shooter situation? For example, a guy comes in, has a weapon, is threatening, and then says, open the door or else. I guess, when do you comply and when do you determine that, and this sounds terrible and it is terrible, but I'll go ahead and say it. When do you determine no one's going to walk away and you should fight or try to run? When is that decision point?
Well, if someone's walking in and just threatening like your description, that wouldn't be an active shooter. Active shooters wouldn't do that. They're literally going to come in and open fire. So that would be a different scenario. I don't really know about compliance like that. I wouldn't really guess. But truly, an active shooter is just going to come in and literally open fire and start taking down targets. That's their goal. They're not going to try to do any sort of robbery or anything like that. Some situations, active shooters will walk in, and this is what occurred at a situation in Renown Medical Center with a shotgun and literally just started walking through hallways and was telling people, get out now. Yes, get out now. That is a great option. Do that, run away and evacuate that area. So the scenario is a little bit different. Now the determination to fight, that's going to be, I guess the only way I could determine that would be an individual choice, individual triggers to determine when, if you truly feel you are going to die and truly feel that is your only option, go with that gut feeling. I've been in a situation myself where an individual presented into my triage area where I was a lead triage nurse one of the nights. And he sat down and said, get everyone out now. And he pulled up the shirt and he had what appeared to be a pistol in his waistband. So immediately we evacuated the area. I stayed behind because I felt that was the thing to do. I felt safe enough where I was. And then the next step, he knew that we had panic alarms and he knew that I had already activated the panic alarm. This individual actually was trying to perform what we call or term suicide by law enforcement or suicide by cop. This was an individual that had an active mental health history and the firearm was not real. So luckily when law enforcement did respond, they immediately recognized the individual and they did not open fire in my triage waiting area. But they immediately took him down to the ground and took out the fake pistol that was purchased at a local toy store. So truly, it's one of those individual choices for hiding versus fighting, etc. Don't know if that verbaceous response answered your question, but that could be a good question for that local law enforcement that you reach out to, which is actually bringing up compliance with. That sounds more like a robbery situation.
No, and that was
Okay.
perfect. And that was the exact thing that was discussed is making those determinations between the different events and how
Yeah.
you act.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, it's Rebecca. Can I piggyback on that just briefly with a conversation that we had recently? It's also important to know what your agency's policies are for that. And I'll just kind of leave it at that, because if you go outside of your agency policy, that could have other implications. So it's very important to know what your agency policies are for engagement as well.
And that makes perfect sense, Rebecca, truly, because, in our agency policy and the policies that we use, that I actually was the one that wrote for all of my health affiliates, is run, hide, and fight is part of it. And we literally stress that, and we actually train on that during our workplace violence and workplace response management courses. So we actually mentioned that. So that is important to note, that if that is not in your policy, it may be something to look at to protect yourselves from a litigation standpoint. All right, so let's move on to recovery. These incidents, they go fast, but their impact can last a very long time. Early recovery phases, again, these things can be very rapid, can occur very fast, little to no warning, and they may be in a once in a career incident, once in a lifetime incident. They really can cause a lot of truly powerful emotional reactions that all individuals expose, whether it's your emergency responders, the direct victims involved, or even bystanders. The choices, especially as responders or anybody involved with, they can really, really stay with them forever and really cause emotional impact. Studies have shown that for every person who is physically injured or directly impacted by any sort of emergency situation or disaster, including an active shooter, there are between 4 to 10 secondary victims that experience a significant impact only on their mental and behavioral health. And those things can stay with them for a very, very long time. These incidents can be especially impactful to children and young adults. So critical incident stress, it's really important to recognize and the impacts of this, the emotional stress and emotional impact it can have. They can cause things like difficulty sleeping, limited attention span, headaches and GI problems, disorientation or confusion, depression, feelings of guilt, especially survivor guilt, immense sadness, and feelings of true feelings of hopelessness. And these are the feelings that have led people down roads of alcoholism, drug addiction, and down the roads of suicidal ideation. So it's important to acknowledge these feelings, important to try to focus on your strengths, and it's important to know how to accept help and know how to reach out to get that help in your recovery of this. I worked with an exceptional paramedic, and I won't go into too much details, but there was a very significant call that had a fatality that he held himself personal for, and it was nothing he could have done. This individual could not be saved, but we participated in critical incident stress debriefings after this for all of our personnel, offered it to the emergency services personnel. This individual refused to participate in that. And truly, the change in his behavior and work performance and, his change in his personal life was so astounding. In less than 6 months, he had gone through a divorce, and in less than 8 months, he had quit being a paramedic and truly moved out of the state in less than a year. It's very hard at times for us as responders to know and accept help, but it's important to know that we need at times to do this. And it's important to know how to get that stress debriefing how to get that counseling. It's important to plan that and know how to get that for just for your own safety and mental health. Long-term recovery, anticipate possible litigation and impact on the business, impact on the morale and productivity. You anticipate, increased sick calls, people not wanting to come to work for a while. Anticipate that if the attacker does survive, the impact that the criminal trial will have on the staff. It will have a negative impact on your staff and personnel. The morale is going to be really very much so impacted. Continue ongoing support for staff, survivors, and of course, victims' families, if that's part of it, including medical and even psychological care. Recognize that not all of the support efforts will be successful, and you may have personnel resign due to the incident. You do everything that you can, but anticipate that, whether it's an active shooter incident or even in healthcare. We've seen this due to COVID and the ongoing and COVID response, personnel just quitting healthcare due to this. So it can be impactful in many ways. And recognize that anniversaries, whether it's 1 year, especially the 1 year, but ongoing anniversaries, will really have an emotional impact for individuals at that time. Anyway, in conclusion, plan and coordinate and train now. Really train now instead of waiting until the unthinkable happens. Be observant and report suspicious and unusual behavior. Again, please, if you see something, say something. Do not hesitate. You will, again, it's a no-fault environment. You aren't going to get in trouble. It's much rather that you report something suspicious than regret not reporting it later. Remember the run, hide, and fight mantra, and always remember to fight your fear. Remember to stop the bleed to increase the chance of survival. Train your internal personnel to help save lives of their coworkers or maybe even themselves. Follow medical care, interviews, counseling, and if needed, provide this if needed. Children and young adults may need additional help and counseling. And on a personal note, having kids myself, sometimes having the news come on if it's an incident of significance, or even discussions amongst your loved ones saying, "Hey, this happened at work." Even that, hearing that can have an emotional impact. So maybe be aware of that, because that can really impact them at home. And practice. I can't emphasize that. Practice ahead of time, prepare, and be ready, because that's going to be the cornerstone of a successful response to this kind of incident. All right, so resources. This is just a list of some resources. There's lots of resources that are out there, but these are just a few, and all of these are free. You can download them, you can look at them. There's some free trainings that are out there, and just some free information that you can use not only internally for your agencies and your facilities, but even personally, so you can be ready to go. And again, I mentioned Stop the Bleed, the Stop the Bleed campaign that's out there. That is a free campaign. There's free training that's out there from PowerPoints, et cetera. And you can even get personnel trained to be certified as Stop the Bleed instructors. All of this is free and is available out there. Lots of resources available for you to help keep your staff, yourself, and your family members safe during an active shooter or active threat incident. And there's our contact information there for myself and Rebecca, if there's any other questions. And really, that's about it from our end.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate your time today and coming out to give the presentation. I just want to tell everyone, thank you for attending the Active Shooter and Active Threat Response for Healthcare training. You will receive a survey for this session, and we would appreciate it if you could complete the survey and provide feedback. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch with me, Jonathan McDowell, at JMCDOWELL, so J McDowell at nvpca.org. On behalf of the Nevada Primary Care Association, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your day. And once again, huge thank you to Connect Consulting and Eric for the presentation. You guys have been amazing.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.